In medical school and residency, everybody talks about getting sued, but it was always something out there, not real or tangible. I never knew what it really meant to get served, that it's not just an email or phone call or a text from your boss. I didn't know it would be someone showing up at my front door the day I brought my daughter home from the hospital after she had surgery, handing me a thick binder of all the things that I supposedly had done wrong. That's when it started, becoming the worst doctor I ever was. Now, it's time for the shift change. My name is Mike McDonald.
And I'm Gina Blocker.
We are emergency physicians with over 35 years of combined experience in community, military, and academic settings. We have courtroom experience.
Both good and bad.
We have business experience.
Both as owners and employees.
We are each married with 5 kids.
But not to each other.
Odds are good that if you're an emergency physician, you will experience burnout, job dissatisfaction, assault in the workplace, depression, anxiety, litigation, and more. We've chosen a career that can literally take years off our lives. So this podcast is here to bring you the doom and gloom and to encourage you to quit.
Wait a second. No. We are 2 emergency physicians who have survived all of the above and are still standing. This podcast is to help you prolong your career in spite of the odds. We will tell you the things we wish we had known when we were starting our careers, use an evidence-based approach to the problems facing our specialty, and offer solutions that have helped us and others using the lessons we've learned along the way.
Okay, that sounds better. Welcome back to the Shift Change podcast, where we talk all things life and emergency medicine. We discuss the things that we wish we had known before and the things that we would like to know. Today, we're going to talk about a somewhat taboo topic. We're going to talk about getting sued. It's one of the greatest fears of many emergency physicians, and it happened to one of us. It happened to me. I refer to the time after I got sued as the worst doctor I ever was. And you and I were talking before we started recording here about kind of the effects that being sued can have on you. But stepping back, and before we get into my story, we're just going to talk about a little bit about just emergency medicine exposure in general. It is a field that is one of the most frequently sued specialties. And there are a variety of reasons for that. Often we're making decisions with limited information. In real time, we have high impact, quick decisions to make that we don't have all the information. We don't have all the facts, and we're still trying to make these high stakes decisions. So that lends itself to lawsuits. And so different people take different approaches to how to handle that and how to try to protect themselves from it. Tell us your perspective a little bit about the other side, about, how do you practice? Do you try to protect yourself legally against lawsuits, or how do you think of that as you go about your day?
Well, coming from somebody, for me, 15 years in the game, I haven't been formally sued or sat on the side of the physician being sued myself. I've only been on the other side, right, in the expert witness role. I often think, about how much of what we do is driven by the fear of being sued, right? Like I still have a healthy fear of a lawsuit, and it's part of practicing defensive medicine. And does that fact actually protect me? Does it make me more vigilant? Does it make me a quote better doctor that I'm aware of the risk? Or does it just further serve as a reason to burn me out because I'm spinning my wheels trying to be the best I can be, trying not to get sued, trying to do the right thing for the patient, document with purpose and document effectively. And, you know, it's all together. It adds a lot of stress to the daily stress of the emergency department, right? And so I think of it like, okay, what do I know? The reality of the risk of emergency medicine. Um, why I'm exposed, just like you said, because of the high risk and the high amount of, acuity that we see every single day in every patient. And then what kind of cases most often lead us to lawsuits in the ER, right? It's cardiac cases, it's orthopedic cases, misdiagnosis, delays in care, documentation, inaccuracies, and then is it me or is it the system that fails me, right? Like, am I able to obtain 3 years back of a patient who's having an acute event and what happened to them at that point and compare it to what's happening at this point, right? Does the hospital afford me to look back that far to see and use the documentation that's, you know, available to me? So, I mean, it's multifactorial. There's a lot of things to talk about when you talk about, the fear of being sued, defensive medicine, and then how the emotional and mental toll that it takes on you. How does it feel to be sued for doing your very best? I think everybody walks into shift to try to do their very best, to try to save a life, to try to make a difference in someone's life on the worst day for some people. But it truly does change the way you practice, I believe, once someone has taken a position to sue you outside of for what you've done in the emergency department. So that's kind of how I feel. It's broken up into different categories: the reality of risk in emergency medicine, documentation and defensive medicine, which is what we talked about, and the emotional mental toll it takes on you when you're actively going through a
Absolutely.
lawsuit. So those three areas are paramount, are key.
Yeah, and I can tell you when I was sued, and the reason I refer to it as sort of the time in which I was the worst doctor I've ever been is because some of the toll that it takes on you was unexpected. So I
Mm-hmm.
remember when I first got served, somebody comes to your house, they knock on the door, like they have to deliver this thing to you in person. And so I remember I had just gotten home, my daughter had had surgery, and I had just gotten home from the hospital when this person knocks on the door. And so it's already an emotional moment in my life, right? And this person knocks on the door and they, here, sign here that you received this. I don't know what it is. I sign it. She hands me this enormous notebook full of stuff. And it, ultimately it's the patient's entire chart and the allegations and what the expert witness testimony. It's all in there. And I remember just sitting down at the kitchen table and reading through this and thinking to myself, like, I can't believe, it's something that you always anticipate is going to happen. You sort of
Mm-hmm.
expect it as a physician because we talk about it so much.
Mm-hmm.
But then when it actually happens, it's very surreal. And it's this
Mm-hmm.
moment where, this thing that you've anticipated for so long is actually happening. And just processing that was a little bit overwhelming in the moment, especially reading through the expert witness. This is what I really remember most distinctly, is reading through this expert witness's allegations about, it was a patient who had coded, and some of the things that they said I should have done are just preposterous. It says, I didn't get a chest x-ray during CPR and I should have done that. And just, you read this
Mm-hmm.
and your blood starts boiling because you just want to respond immediately and say, no, this is ridiculous. This is not how it was. And part of the hard part for me of the process is that this dragged on over 2 years. It was more than 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, I got dropped from the suit. Like, professionally, there's no negative, like, ultimate downside from it. My name's not in the data bank. I didn't have to pay any money. But it was a 2.5 year process
Mm-hmm.
where what feels like in that first moment of like, well, this is absurd, and I could, with one argument, end this conversation, gets drawn out into this just really painful process. But as part of that, the level of detail at which they want to know, why did it take you so long to do X? Why, it was a code situation. Well, I'm in the ER and the code's up in the ICU. Well, why did it take you so long to respond? Well,
Mm-hmm.
I got to catch an elevator, like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But then when you're being and those, it's an answerable question in the long run. But when you realize that that's the level of detail that these people are looking at the chart with, then the next time you get a floor code, you have this urge, like, do I need to sprint up the stairs
Mm-hmm.
and like arrive breathless or not take the elevator because somebody's going to be looking at this chart, right? And at the end of the day, that was the worst thing for me in terms of patient care, was that for really a long time after I got sued, I spent a lot of time looking over my shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of just making decisions reactively and reflexively and just doing the right thing for the patient, there's in the back of my mind, well, what if? What if somebody looks at this chart later on? What? And you talked about practicing defensive medicine. I think that's it in my experience. That's a terrible way to practice medicine
Mm-hmm.
because it doesn't put the patient at the forefront, and there are things that you can't control for. I
Mm-hmm.
can't control how long it takes me to get upstairs. You can influence that, but you can't control. There is going to be time between when the code gets called and when you get there. And at the end of the day, like, it doesn't really matter in the sense that if you're doing your best for the patient, that's what lets you sleep at night. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
the biggest thing.
And
Uh,
and to your point, over documentation doesn't always mean better protection, right? Like more tests don't always,
mhm.
ordering more tests or scans or consults, is part of the defensive part because it's supposed to protect you, you or the patient, because the patient's the one there for the care, not you, right? And I think we
Right.
lose our focus when we're doing like who are we actually protecting, right? When there's risks
Exactly.
associated with radiation for CT scans and you know um, even an IV line placed too long or with can infiltrate, right? And just the littlest things that you're not thinking of in the moment when you're ordering more tests, having the patient stay in the hospital or admitting them when they don't need it can put them at risk for iatrogenic causes, for opportunistic infections, right? And so those aren't things that are in the front of our mind when we're doing things to protect us, right?
Right.
And it's supposed
Right.
to be protecting the patient, but in the end, there very well could be an untoward effect for the patient or outcome, right? Um,
Yep. Yeah. At its core, it's pitting you against the patient
that's it.
as opposed to you and the patient being on the same team.
That's it. And then you're like, you get this, like like you said, you were served in person, and you're thinking, well, I could have done this, I could have done this, but no one else is looking at the other side of the risk associated with those protection pieces, right? That probably wouldn't have given you any more information. And sometimes it's that the patient came back and had another, symptom or something else that happened, and they came back to the ER, which is what they were supposed to do, right? Like the other person is
Mhm.
not sitting on the side of, well, the initial shock, the isolation, the impact on your practice, the second victim. It's almost like a second victim phenomenon,
Right.
it's you're traumatized by the legal process itself, and not even the event that led to it sometimes, right? The person
Oh,
sometimes
for sure.
doesn't even have to die or have a terrible outcome, right? I mean, this is the reality. My voice is getting high because I'm like, I felt it from so many different, even though I haven't been sued, I've seen and I've stood on the position to protect doctors who are in this position. And after the case is done, sitting with them and being like, I got you. I understand the other side. Even though I'm on your side, I got the other side too, right? And so
Yeah.
it's about forming support systems. It's about reframing. It's about, understanding that lawsuits are often like systemic outcomes, not personal failures, right? And so
Right.
that's the
So
part.
so two things to that, Gina. Two things to that. One is when you talk about building social support and like having people support you, the first thing the lawyer tells you is you can't talk
Mm-hmm.
about this case
That
with
part.
anybody.
That part.
And that isolation is
Mm-hmm.
so hard
Mm-hmm.
because all you
Mm-hmm.
want to do is talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
they tell you that you can't. And
Mm-hmm.
I still to this day, I don't really understand the rationale to that, but I can tell you that it makes it miserable.
Mm-hmm.
It just adds to the difficulty. And the other thing what you said prompted me to think about is the how personal it feels.
Mm-hmm.
It feels very personal.
Mm-hmm.
It is this attack on your character, and especially the
Mm-hmm.
way that it's written about if they're asking for damages, to like punitive damages, to teach you a lesson so that you never do this sort of thing
Mm-hmm.
again. And it's like I'm here doing my best. Like I'm trying to help somebody, and I'm working my fingers to the bone, trying to help people in their crisis moment, and I'm being told that I need to be scolded.
Mm-hmm.
Like it feels almost intimately personal. Uh, but the irony of it is that as I went through the process, I realized that it is anything but.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in the room when the plaintiff, my attorney had the opportunity to depose the plaintiff, and I was in the room, just sitting at the table in the back or whatever, and he's being recorded, and my attorney gets up and she says, "Hey, do you know who this guy is?" And she points at me, and he's like, "Nope."
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, and she gave him my name, and she said, "Do you recognize this name?" And he said, "Nope." She's like, "Do you know if or how he was involved in your wife's care?" "Nope." And it's this great sort of juxtaposition of like how personal it feels
Mm-hmm.
and how impersonal it actually is.
Mm-hmm.
The attorney, when he deposed me, confused
Mm-hmm.
me for somebody else that he had deposed previously. Like
Mm-hmm.
there was
Mm-hmm.
nothing personal about it, but that doesn't change the way that it feels.
Sure.
And that impact really changes the way that you take care. It does for me, and I don't think I'm alone. Changes the way that you view the patient interaction
Mm-hmm.
uh, in a really negative way. And it took me some years. And Gina, I still to this day, I mean, I got served in 2015, so a decade ago. And still to this day, I find myself, especially with sicker patients, I have to actively fight the urge to think defensively, to
Mm-hmm.
think about how is this going to look if
Mm-hmm.
it gets reviewed later on, because it kind of creeps into your subconscious, and and you don't even realize you're doing it sometimes. And it was a real epiphany for me and kind of a turnaround moment when I realized that this was happening, because a friend of mine actually mentioned it. He was like, "Hey, I think that lawsuit is still kind of
Mm-hmm.
affecting you in the way that
Mm-hmm.
you practice." And he saw it when I didn't, but it really kind of flipped a switch to make me realize how I had been doing that um, without knowing it, and it allowed me to be more proactive I mean, it has to enter your thought process. Okay, here's the decision I'm trying to make. I need to choose what I would do if this was my mother,
Mm-hmm.
or I need to choose what I would want someone to do if this was my family member and I was not the doctor. That has to drive your decision making more than how this is going to look to someone who's reviewing this
And
chart.
that requires a certain kind of closeness, right, to the patient. That requires
Oh yeah.
some vulnerability, right? This
Oh
person
yeah.
sat in a room with you and didn't know who you were, but yet the consequences were so real, for you, and they
Oh
didn't
yeah.
even recognize your face or your name, right? But yet this
Yep.
was so heavy on you, and so identifying for you, right?
Oh yeah.
What we try to do
Yeah. And
every
still to this
day.
day, I mean, 10 years later, it still was a defining moment in my career, because it almost, listen, I tried to get out of medicine for a
Well,
while
I mean, yeah.
because it became so toxic, and it makes it took all the joy out of practicing medicine. It made it so that it was not fun anymore. I didn't want to see sick patients anymore because all I saw was a minefield.
Hmm.
And to use your phrase, I felt like I was walking in a minefield with clown shoes on.
That's it. That's it. Waiting for to
Uh,
step on the next grenade, and just or landmine. And here's the thing. I feel like it's quite uncanny for people to actually leave the field, leave medicine altogether. The least that you could get is somebody to put a face to a name. I mean, that's incredible to me. Like that, what you said really struck me because why don't we have peer networks, therapy, institutionalized therapy? This is not an uncommon thing, especially in our field. We are one of the highest risks field in medicine.
yep.
People are
And
leaving
and
the
most
field.
people, yeah, and the people that that have been sued, probably you wouldn't know who they were,
That's it.
because it is such a vulnerable thing. I think, I mean, after I went through the process, as I was going through this process, I mentioned it here and there, and actually was shocked at who I worked with that had been sued and who I worked with that had not.
Mhm.
Some of the older docs that I had worked with that I just assumed, you've been in practice long enough, like surely
Mhm.
you've
Mhm.
experienced this, had never been sued, and some of the docs that I thought I was pretty good friends with had been sued, and I never knew it because
Mhm.
they just didn't talk about it.
Mhm.
And so it's really eye opening to your point. It's not something that we talk about a lot,
Mhm.
and there are resources available. And there are books written on this. There are a lot of groups have resources for people that are going through this. I I in my hubris, I didn't think I would need that
Mhm.
because I just assumed, because it's part of the job and we've talked about it for so long, I just sort of always assumed that like I'd be able to handle it.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
the pathology that we talk about of the emergency physician, like the I got this mentality, it 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 really did me a disservice in this experience because I didn't think I needed any help, and it wasn't until much later that I realized how bad off I was.
Mhm.
There was one sort of defining moment where I was, probably 4 or 6 months, a year after I got served. I was taking care of this patient, and he had an unstable tachycardia. He was this young kid. He had like SVT, and his blood pressure was in the 60s. And I called the cardiologist before I cardioverted him because I was so scared of doing the wrong thing.
Mhm.
And just in that moment, I could feel it. I knew what I needed to do, and I couldn't bring myself to do it. And it was just such a miserable feeling that
Mhm.
that that kind of highlighted for me, man, this is worse than I think it is. This is
Mhm.
a really bad moment.
Mhm.
Um, and I still remember crystal clear how that interaction went. And thankfully the cardiologist was very gracious. He's like, yeah, you know what you needed. It was somebody I knew. I mean, I'd been working here for years. He's like, yeah, you know what you need to do. Just go ahead and do it. It's fine. It'll be fine. And we cardioverted, and the guy did fine, and we moved on. But just it really
It's the
brought into
second
focus
guessing.
for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's the second
Oh yeah, you
guessing.
second guess everything you do, and it
Yeah.
just paralyzes you. It
Yeah.
makes it so that you're taking terrible care of patients.
Because medicine still confuses being sued with being bad, right? And the shame in
Yes.
the
Yeah.
culture, right? We're trained to fix
Yeah.
things, to hold it together. When something breaks, we fix it. And we internalize that if we can't fix it, it's a failure, right? No one wants to see it be seen
Right.
as careless, like we're incompetent, right? So we hide it,
Yep.
and then we pretend it didn't happen, right? Even when it's
Yep.
keeping us up at night. And honestly, there's fear. Oh, what's going on with him? Like people are gossiping. Are they talking about me? Do they know about the lawsuit? Do they know I did something? Is the word gotten out? Right? And then
Yep.
people start. You think people are questioning your judgment, right? But silence
Yep.
feeds the stigma. It truly feeds the stigma, Mike. That
Yep.
that about the it's like a rite of passage. I remember when I was a resident, they would tell us it's not if, it's when,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
right? You can do everything right and get sued. I need to make that point. You can do everything right and still get sued.
Gina, that's the irony of my case. So like my big fear had always been like we all make mistakes. I had always been afraid I'm going to get sued for a case where I hurt somebody and it's obvious, and I didn't do something. I left something on the table. I didn't think of the right diagnosis, whatever it is. When I In the case I got sued for, when I look back at it, I mean, I scrutinized that thing left, right, up, down, sideways. I I could not think of anything that I would have done differently had I had the opportunity.
Of course not. Because we need
But that
spaces.
didn't matter.
But
It did not matter.
you know what? We need spaces like this, Mike, where we start with leadership and community, where we start as senior physicians, mentoring, opening up about our own experiences. It gives people the permission to feel the same. Let me just share a quick story. I suffer with an addiction to Sour Patch Kids. Okay, I love candy. I suffer an addiction. I went on Instagram and posted that I've been hiding my candy around the house, not from my kids because they eat it, but because if they find it, they're gonna dispose of it. I mean, my kids will just throw it away. They know I suffer with it. They know I'm up munching at night. And I posted about my struggle, right? Like I suffer like with sugary
Yeah.
candy, sour candy. The amount of people that came in my inbox that were like, I suffer too. Here's some non-sugar substitutes that you can use. Some of these things help me, like, get off the Sour Patch Kids and like utilize like other things that didn't have sugar and those kind of things. Or even like I've been there, right? It helps me
Yep.
actually not eat sour candy. So I've been sour candy free all week. And it's because I was open about my struggle, right? And with that, I help somebody else
Yep.
along the way, right? So the more we share these stories, we replace judgment with empathy. When a colleague says, "Hey, I'm going through this case," the response should be, "I've been there. Let's talk about
Yep.
it." Right? And the more we
Yep.
humanize the reality of the darkness and the isolation, the less dark it becomes, right? Because somebody's
For sure.
walking with us, right? It's not the end of your career. It's it's
Nope.
how to survive it, right? And like the fear that it brings, it also brings a connection with that person in your specialty. What we're doing right here is important, not just for you to get it to vocalize it because you've been through it 10 years ago. It's still important. You still have the effects. You still are carrying the
100%.
sequelae of that
100%.
case, right? Somebody else is going through it right now and it's darker,
Yep.
right? It's darker,
Yep.
right? And so this is the importance of the community. It can be as simple as Sour Patch Kids or as deadly as a cardiac arrest. You could have done everything right, but vocalizing your struggle is going to help somebody else get through it.
100%. And that's why we're here. That's why we're talking about it. We'd love to hear your story. If you want to share your experience with us, feel free to reach out. We'd love for you to be part of the conversation. You can reach us at shiftchangepod@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And Gina, we're going to continue this conversation because I think there's more to dig into when we have a little more time, because this is a big topic. It affects pretty much all of us. And I agree with what you're saying. The conversation about it is important because if you're going through this, if you've been through this, if you're scared of going through this, you are not alone. We're all there with you. So with that, we're going to call it a day. The things that we know that we wish we would have known, boy, in this episode, there's a lot. I wish I would have known that I was not alone. I wish I would have known that it was not personal. I wish I would have known that you can still have a fruitful and enjoyable career after a lawsuit. I know that now, but I didn't know it then, and I wish I had known. I wish somebody had been there speaking into that for me. So we want to be that for you. Gina, any closing thoughts?
One thing I wish I would have known is that though it feels personal and like it's questioning your integrity and your competence, it's not a verdict of who you are as a physician. And I think I didn't grow up in training like that. So I wish I would have known that the lawsuit is more about the system and not about me as a person.
100%. And you are not defined, even if it is a mistake that you made, you are not defined by your worst moment.
Mm-hmm.
We'll probably do an entire episode just on that concept. You are not defined by your worst moment. So stay tuned. Look forward to talking with you guys again. And until next time, be safe, be enjoy. I blew that. Be safe and enjoy your shift.
Take care.
Dang, I thought that went really well, just right to the last second.
Good job.
Only a doctor would say, "I'm just a doctor."
We have to change the narrative.
I need to rekindle this curiosity about why we do what we do.
Give yourself time to mourn the change of the shift that you're in your life.
It's okay when it feels like too much.
It's okay.